Hi, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Cedric Marin. I'm an immigration lawyer, and I'm joined with Alicia, also an immigration lawyer. How are you doing, Alicia?
I am well, Cedric. It is a beautiful fall day here in Alberta, and I think we were just chatting before we started. This is one of the rare weeks where we don't have a brand new announcement from immigration, we don't have a new policy, we don't have new regulations that have come into force, and we don't have some brand new notice that changes the way that immigration is working this week. So this is pretty refreshing. It's a nice little lull in the stormy seas of immigration.
Yeah, we definitely know a lot of stuff is coming, right? With the TR, it's not the TR to PR announcement, but the announcement on the transition, right? A lot of new stuff is coming.
Yeah, so yes, the same things are still in the works, and it's going to take a lot of time for people to try to figure out, well, how do we adapt to mandatory online filing through the new PR portal, for example? So that's happened for most applicants as of September 22nd. So that's something that's still going to be affecting people. And then we do have the switch over to tier happening in November. So on or before November 16th, people will have to make sure that they're updating their NOC codes so that they're under the new tier system for the 2021 knock instead of the 2016 knock, which we've been using up until now.
And that's only going to apply to those that are currently have an express entry profile, right? If you've already submitted, you don't have to update it.
If you've already gotten an ITA before this point, then it doesn't need to be updated. And we're still waiting for all the details in terms of how they want applicants with express entry profiles in the pool to update the knock, because so far there's not a way to do it. So we'll have to see when they roll that out and how they provide their instructions on it.
Oh, pretty exciting. Pretty exciting. Well, listen, we were also talking before. We've already scheduled this in advance, and we have just questions already pouring in before we even went live. So I say that if you can post where you're joining us from, and then we just dive right to it. We're gonna be going on for the next about 45, 50 minutes, and then we're going to keep going. So, all right, so let's take a look at our questions here. If you're joining us right now, just welcome once again for those new viewers, and make sure to hit subscribe. You can see our live programming. We have a lot this week going on, but also keep in mind that sometimes Mark does other live Q&As as the week goes on, which are sometimes not really scheduled. So we have Mary joining us. There we go. Mary says hello. Well, hello to you too, Mary. Nice for you to join us. You joined me also yesterday. We also have Belen. It says hello, Alicia and Cedric. Do we still have to pay for medical exams for express entry? This tricked me. I thought this was just a hello, Cedric and Alicia. Got us. Well, what do you think, Alicia?
Oh gosh. Maybe we can go through a few more hellos and then we can jump into
Yeah,
questions and people can put a little Q in front of their
sure.
questions.
Ghislaine says bonsoir Cédric. Well, bonsoir à vous aussi, Ghislaine. And Alicia, I didn't tell you this yet, but we're more and more French content is going to be pumped out, and I'm really excited to show you some of the stuff I've been working on. Just waiting to put the final touches on it. But Alicia also speaks French. She's also a bilingual
I
lawyer.
I do also speak French, but I am out of practice. I am like it's been a while since I've had to use French on a daily basis, but I did do all of my elementary, junior high, I did high school, I did university French, and I just need more people to speak French with, I think it's my problem.
Which I guess it's me, right? Speak French with.
That's right.
Well, listen, the times that you have spoken French, Belen says, haha, well, there you go, you got us. But the times you've spoken French with me, I was really impressed, so there we have it. We have Nisha says, Nisha joining us from Toronto, so a little bit early for you, 10 a.m. We have here Mary, who says, hi, Alicia and Cedric with a smiley face. And we have Fabio. I think you also joined us Tuesday for my live Q&A. Says, good morning, good afternoon, good vibes. Good vibes to you too. So we have, wow, we have a lot of questions, Alicia, and I think we should go back to this first one on the medical exams. Do we still have to pay
Yeah.
fee for medical exams?
Yeah. So, um, it depends. And I don't know, Cedric, if I can, well, if you can search up the links for medical exams for express
Absolutely.
entry, but yeah. Um, so it has been, so the general answer is yes, you generally still have to have a medical exam. It has to be valid, and you have to submit it with your express entry application. In certain circumstances, they have been looking at waiving updated medical exams if people have had medical exams in the past, depending on how long ago they were taken and whether they're still valid. So it does depend. Be really careful. If there is any doubt about it, then make sure that you do the medical exam, because there is no point in getting your express entry application refused because you failed to do a medical exam. Um, but if you are sure that you fit under the policy and that you are not required to do a new medical exam, then make sure that you attach a copy of that policy to your application so that there's no confusion about whether or not that medical exam was required.
Yeah, and a lot of people are having delays for medical exams as well. And what is the current practice?
So it does depend. So everybody has to view the panel physician near them, and it doesn't necessarily have to be near them. I know when we had the huge rush on applications, when we had the giant draw
Mhm.
in February, people couldn't find medical exams. People couldn't find language testing centers because there was such a rush on these services that it just became fully booked. So one thing to do is to check with the designated panel physicians near you, but you might actually have to travel to another city if there is another panel physician that's available that is taking medical exam booking appointments earlier. And if you happen to, really need it within the next little bit because you've gotten an invitation to apply, then that might be something to consider as well. But do keep in mind that generally the medical exams are only valid for 12 months from the date that you have completed that medical exam.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, there we have it. We'll go straight to Naval, who has one of our paid $10 paid question. Naval, let's get right to it. So Naval says, I've completed my 1 year experience in company X under post-graduation work permit NOC A. Well, congratulations. The same company X gave me an LMIA exempt closed work permit recently for another 2 years. Can I claim the 50 points? It now it it can we claim the 50 points for this new uh, work permit?
hmm And I think, Cedric, I think I need to write a blog article on offers of employment and how this works. So there's a lot of confusion out there. If you do go to the Express Entry Offer of Employment Skilled Immigrants page, then you'll see that there are a number of requirements that have to be met in order for somebody to properly claim what it is arranged employment experience points. But it's confusing in people's express entry profiles because it says, do you have an offer of employment? And then there's a whole bunch of other questions that they ask as part of that. And a lot of people get confused because they think, well, I'm working in Canada, or maybe you're not working in Canada, but you got a job offer from a Canadian company. Um, but there's only very specific circumstances under which somebody can claim those arranged employment points and get those 50 points. 50 points is what you would get for CRS score. If it's a job, it would be 200 points if it's a certain 0 job or a managerial level job. But in general, it's the 50 points. So take a look. And Cedric, I don't know if you're able to share the screen on the Offer of Employment Skilled Immigrants page or
Offer of
not.
employment. Yeah, I think I have it up.
Okay.
Sorry, I know it's a limitation that we have with the software for seeing the full screen.
Yeah.
Oops. Now we're switching. Now we're just diving around here. I just closed it. I just had it.
Okay.
But no, let's get it. Let's get it back up. Skilled LMIA exemption. No, sorry, it was offer of
Yeah.
employment
Offer of Employment Skilled
skilled
Immigrants
immigrants. There we go.
Express Entry. Yeah.
So we have the page right now. Let me see if I can just share the whole thing with you. Um, yeah, there we go. Do
There
you
we go.
see it now?
Perfect. I do.
Excellent.
Um, so if you, okay, so starting at the top of that page, it has to be a new job offer. And this is often where people get confused. So it specifically says that you can't use the same job offer that you use to start with the company. So what has to happen is that your employer basically needs to say, we want to retain this person and we are willing or we intend to employ them for another year after they get PR. And of course, right now the processing times are somewhere like upwards of 15 months for a PR application under Express Entry. We'll see if that actually comes down to be around the service standard of 6 months that they were aiming for. But right now, to say that you're going to employ somebody for another year after PR is in effect more than 2 years from now. So it needs to be a new job offer, and it's not the same job offer that you use to start with your employment. Take a look. There's a few other requirements. It's got to have all of these details as part of the arranged employment, but then it goes down under the Federal Skilled Workers and Canadian Experience class. It's got to be made by one employer. It has to be continuous. It's got to be paid. It can't be seasonal. It's got to be over 30 hours per week. It's got to be NOC A, B, or 0. And then these are the requirements. So it must be made, and there are 3 different subcategories. So the first 2 have to deal with an LMIA. So the first bullet point would be if you have a new positive LMIA. The second would be if you're currently working on an LMIA work permit, neither of which you're applying yet for our question here. The third one would be applying. So if you have a valid work permit for NOC A, B, or O in a job that's exempt from needing an LMIA. So maybe you're on a PGWP or you're on an ICT or something like that. But the problem is it says, and you're currently working for an employer specified on the work permit. And so you cannot claim arranged employment points if you're on an open postgrad work permit because it's not employer specific. So when you pull open your postgrad work permit itself and you look at the document, when it says employer, if it says any or open, then it is a open work permit. There is no employer specified. And one of the requirements to be able to claim points for arranged employment is that you have to currently be working on a employer specific work permit. So if your employer has actually gone and gotten you that LMIA based work permit, then once you get on that LMIA based work permit and you've been working for that same employer for a year, and if they're then willing to offer you work for another year, then you could claim those arranged employment points. So be really careful about making sure that you fit the criteria. And there is more information if you look at the ministerial instructions and you look at the offer of arranged employment under the ministerial instructions. So yeah, if you pull those up, it'll go through the definition of what is a qualifying offer of arranged employment, and it's under section 29 and what we're talking about here. So look at section 29 sub 2, and then you'll go through those subsections to see which one is going to apply.
It's a lot of
Yeah.
legalese, eh? All these all these definitions.
Right. And that's why I usually refer people to the first page that we were looking at, because it's a little bit more in plain English. It's a little bit easier to understand. But so many people miss the point that if you're on an LMIA exempt work permit, it has to be an employer specific LMIA exempt work permit, like an intercompany transfer or one of the free trade agreement work permits. Usually are LMIA exempt, but they're employer specific.
There we go. That's the answer to the question. Yeah, it's. I think we're talking about this as well, where a common mistake that people make when they do their own profiles is they check yes to the box. The yes, I have an offer of
Mhm.
employment, which is true, right? They have a like a plain language offer of employment, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and so if that's happened to you, if you're in the situation where you thought you had an offer of employment and you got those 50 points and then you got an ITA, you got that invitation to apply under a draw because you mistakenly thought you had those offer of employment points, please talk to us. Please book a consultation. You're probably going to have to decline that invitation to apply and make sure that you fix your profile and take a look at what your options are. But you don't want to be in a situation where you're misrepresenting or where you are proceeding or trying to proceed with an ITA where you don't have the points to back it up. So make sure that you've done your homework on what qualifying offer of arranged employment.
yeah, because essentially they would wait what 10, 15, 20 months to then get a rejection and miss out on
Yeah,
continuous draws and other programs, right? So quite serious
yeah.
implications. If you know you're going to fail and you still submit it, I mean, good luck. But you're just going to be wasting, 10, 15 months where you could be, actually applying with a valid PR application.
And you miss,
Yeah.
yeah, you risk misrep as well, so you don't want to go there.
That's true. I mean, at the core, if you know that what you're submitting is not true, right? Um,
That's right.
then absolutely. All right, Enid has an interesting question, and I think this comes up a lot, like when we talk about selection knock codes and whatnot, right? So here they're saying, well, actually, you can read it. You can see the questions now, Alicia. So I'll leave it up to you.
It's, yeah, it's very small, but I can
Oh
kind of see
no,
it.
no, no! I got
Um,
you. It's so the knock code is 0124 advertising manager. In this picture below, it's written that they are employed by industrial establishments. What's the meaning of this? The question continues saying, I'm confused because I'm employed in a firm in a gold jewelry manufacturing. So is my knock correct or wrong?
mhm. So maybe we can go to the 0124, Cedric, and we'll take a look at that knock, and people can understand, well, what's going on here? What are we talking about? And how do we sort this out for knocks? So one thing to keep in mind, and Cedric, if you just scroll up again, and
Yep,
people can see which
absolutely.
version of the knock you've pulled. So as we said at the beginning, we're still in the knock 2016 world. The version that's the most updated version is 1.3. Sometimes when you do a search, you'll actually pull up the knock 2016 version 1.0. So you can just make sure that the version is the most current version. And then we do have this 2021 version, but it's not in force yet. That's what's going to be coming into force November 16th is tier. So for now, we'll take a look at the knock 2016 version 1.3. And when you look at these knock profiles, you'll see that the number starts with a 0. So as soon as it starts with a 0, we know that this is a managerial level job. And that's when I talk with clients, one of the first things I say is, okay, if you are claiming a managerial level job, are you actually managing people? Do you actually have people who report to you in your team? Because if you don't, then you should think carefully about whether you're going to be claiming a managerial level knock. So that's one thing, and I'll leave it at that because I don't know anything else about Anat's situation right now. But you'll see a few things. You'll see at the top of the knock, it has that opening paragraph. And that's what we call the lead statement. And so when you look at the requirements under the ministerial instructions, it talks about the lead statement for that knock. And it also talks about the majority of the main duties or the essential main duties versus the non essential main duties. So in that opening paragraph, it gives a overview of what advertising, marketing, public relations, and e-business managers do. And so in order to meet the requirements to prove that you are doing this work properly and it falls within this proper not category, you have to show that you've done the actions in the lead statement. And so those actions here are planning, organizing, directing, controlling, evaluating the activities of establishments and departments involved in commercial, industrial, and e-business advertising, marketing, and public relations. So what they're talking about are the activities that are done. And that's what you have to prove that you're doing, the activities of the lead statement. The next sentence normally kind of orients the officer towards who employs these kind of people. So I don't know if you were working as a deep sea diver and the knock says that you're normally employed by fisheries and oceans and companies that are doing biological research, and you happen to be working for something completely unrelated, there might be concerns about whether you're in the right industry. So the next thing is, are they employed by the type of business that would normally employ people doing these activities? So when they look at this, it does depend upon what kind of business you're working for and how that fits into their overarching kind of categorization of industrial establishments, government departments, advertising, marketing, public relations, and consulting businesses. So just because the industry that you're working in doesn't exactly fit, it might fit one of the other categories. They're normally pretty broad in terms of who they describe in that lead statement. So take a look at the activities that you do in the lead statement rather than necessarily the industry, as long as it's a related industry or you can make an argument or why this makes sense for this occupation. Um, you can talk about it in your letter of explanation. You can also have the company address it directly in their letter of recommendation or their employment letter. So how does this industry normally employ people with this NOC, and how does it make sense? And then, of course, the next thing is to go and look at the main duties, and Nat hasn't asked us about the main duties, but take a look here because it actually is broken down into advertising managers, marketing managers, public relations managers, and e-business managers. So there's actually 4 subcategories of this one NOC. And so most of the time people are going to be doing one of these 4 subcategories and then orienting their job in what kind of activities apply to that subcategory. So it's not necessarily the industry. Make an argument for why that industry can fit within the lead statement, but the main thing is the main duties that are listed in the lead statement, and then the majority, which is all of them, because there's only one for each of the sub-bullets that are in the main duties for this category.
Oh, that's fantastic, Alicia. I mean, that was a grade A plus answer. I mean, that was really informative.
Thanks, Cedric.
No, seriously. I mean, it's true. This is always in the knocks about the industries, and absolutely. And I think a thing as well, that a question that I get as well is, okay, what about the employment requirements, right? What about the education requirements, right? What about, okay, I don't have this experience, and just to emphasize your point where the ministerial instructions talk about the lead statement and they talk about the main duties, right? So if you don't necessarily have the education, it doesn't mean that it's not your knock, right? For the purposes of immigration.
That's right. Yeah. So go back to the ministerial instructions because it talks about the
Absolutely.
activities in the lead statement and it talks about the majority of the main duties. So that is what we are, yeah. So here we go. So it's the same for foreign work experience. It's the same for Canadian work experience. But if you look at it, perform the actions described in the lead statement for the occupation set out in the occupational descriptions, as well as a substantial number of the main duties. So including all essential duties. So that's what the legislation says.
And what do they mean by essential duties?
Yeah, so normally if you look at the NOC, there's some main duties that start with the word may,
Mm.
right? So may do this or that in addition to the other duties. And so that's usually duties that are optional rather than essential. And depending on what you're doing, you might be able to make an argument about what is essential or what is not essential for those, because it says main duties and it doesn't, when if you look at the NOC, it doesn't say essential duties, it just says main duties.
Absolutely.
So, but the ones that start with the word may are
Right.
probably the ones that are optional.
Right. And so, and as you mentioned, I mean, an implied, right, if you go back here to the manager one, an implied essential duty would be, well, as you mentioned, managing staff, right?
Yes.
Quite,
Yeah.
quite essential.
Yeah. So if you're not actually managing people, then generally you should not be claiming a knock that starts with 0.
Fantastic. We don't necessarily go in order for our questions, just for you just joining us. We're just trying to find questions that are most helpful to you. And just as a friendly reminder, we are immigration lawyers at Holth Immigration Law, and you can head over to our website, holthlaw.com, and we talked about blogs, and so under our resource tab for blogs, you can actually find all our different blogs that we write about what is happening. Alicia wrote our most latest blog about new requirements for Canadian employers. So this deals with changes that are coming up, and employers need to comply. Or sorry, not coming up, that are effective, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the legislation actually was passed. So they had drafted that legislation. It had been circulated, but it hadn't been actually made law or entered into force until the end of September. And it was fairly quick as soon as they announced it. So be really careful if you're an employer because there are new regulatory requirements. The Immigration Refugee Protection Regulations have actually been changed. The law is now effective. And so these are things that people have to be doing. And it's practical things like putting up these workers know your rights notifications in your lunchrooms or putting them on your company website, making sure that people understand what their rights are as temporary foreign workers. And it's either under the LMIA program, Temporary Foreign Worker Program, but it's also under the International Mobility Program. And so in the past, these types of rules didn't apply if companies were bringing in intercompany transfers or if they were bringing people in under one of the free trade agreements, but now they do. And so this is a significant change in terms of immigration, corporate business immigration procedures and policies.
Yeah, and you have quite a bit of experience, say, working with corporate with businesses for immigration.
Yeah, so that's something that Mark and I have done for years, and for sure we try to help individuals at Healthy Immigration Law, but we also do help corporations who are trying to navigate this and make sure that they are doing it properly for their employees as well.
Yeah, so fantastic. So if you want to speak with a lawyer at the very top of our website, you can head on here, and after Alicia's at the very top, you can see more. Oh, there we go, the corporate immigration, right? You can book a consult with Alicia, and then we have Chanel, we have myself here at the bottom, and then we have Mark all the way at the very bottom. So, yeah, take a look at our schedule, take a look at what we do. We have a lot of resources on our website, and we'd love to speak to you more about your individual PR case. All right, let's head back here to the stream. Let's see what's happening. Let's see the questions. We have another 20 minutes or so. Let's keep going. All right. So Alicia, this is a question that came up on my live stream, and it's a question I was actually wondering myself a few weeks ago. So this question says, "Hi Alicia and Cedric, I wonder how to fill the intended location of employment in Canada for express entry if I've been working from home, right? So what do they put
Mm-hmm.
in their when they get their ITA? They're submitting their application. It asks about the employers. What do you put?"
Mm-hmm. And the big reason that this is important is because you can only qualify for express entry if you are living anywhere in Canada other than the province of Quebec. And so this becomes a problem if somebody is working or has lived in Quebec. Maybe they went to school in Quebec or they have family members that are in Quebec. So if you have been living or have a background that involves Quebec, be very, very careful about this question. If you have been going to school and working and living anywhere other than Quebec, you probably are okay as long as you explain what's going on and why you've chosen what you've chosen in your letter of explanation, your client information field. So, if you are not in Canada, if you're a federal skilled worker applicant and you don't know which place you intend to go live in Canada, you have a fairly wide latitude as long as you've picked someplace other than Quebec. So really it's fine unless you do have some sort of ties to Quebec, in which case you really do need to be careful to show an actual intention and to live somewhere and land somewhere and make a go of it and a legitimate effort to live anywhere other than the province of Quebec.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
tricky. I've had a few clients who say, "Listen, I'm in Quebec right now, but next month I'm going to get an apartment and a job and whatnot. I just want to accept this express entry application, this ITA,"
Mm,
and it's usually not
mm.
recommended, right?
Well, the risk is that immigration simply says you're not eligible, right? Express entry is not something that's eligible to applicants who are in the province of Quebec. And the reason why that is because Quebec has its own process. So they have to go through a CSQ, CAQ process if they want to come and live temporarily or permanently in the province of Quebec. So, that intention is really important. And it's the same thing. I get this question a lot for a lot of the provincial nominee programs where people say, well, do I actually need to live in that province? Well, yes, if you've told the province that you intend to live there, then you need to prove it and you need to actually follow through on what you are saying that you intend.
There we go. Right, let's try to find our next question. Again, we're not necessarily going by order, but we're trying to find questions that can apply to a lot of individuals. Um, and you know what? I think Kellyanne has a good question. Kellyanne Jofiel said, "What is the latest with study permit applications? Is the backlog reducing?" So, the January intake is coming up in what, 2 months now? It's approaching quickly. Well, 3 months, but if you include October, but it's approaching quickly, right?
It is approaching quickly, and Chanel has actually written an article all about study permits, and we're pretty much getting close to the cutoff on when people can be making sure that they get an approval so that they can attend a January or a winter intake. So be really careful about study permits if you're getting close to the time where you if you submit an application, depending on where you're living and whether you're doing this under Student Direct Stream or whether you're just doing it under a regular study permit application, um, it can get very complicated if you have not received a decision yet from immigration and the school is saying that they're not going to hold your spot if you can't prove that you've got that letter of approval on your study permit. And you should really carefully take a look at what the policies are in regards to your deposit and your tuition fees. And then it might be a situation where you're going to have to defer to a different semester, but that can cause complications for your study permit application because depending on where you are in the process, you might have to start all over, or you might have to try to notify immigration and see if they can change their approval to correspond to the new intake, the deferred intake. So be really careful about that. Take a look at Chanel's article.
There we have it. I also think there's a video that she did with Mark, so you can also take a look at our YouTube channel. Lots of resources, really stuff coming on the last few weeks, but also existing stuff. So we do have Mark and Chanel did a video on that, which has more information about study permits. The backlog. I think generally speaking, the immigration processing times are shorter than what's advertised online and what is happening more and more. Um, this being said, we're still talking about substantive processing timelines, right?
Yeah, um, yeah, I mean, it generally is taking a while, and I did want to bring something else up too. So do check the IRCC processing times depending on the country that you are applying through. If it's SDS, they should be making those decisions much more quickly. But again, there's always circumstances where they have concerns about documents or they think that you have failed to upload something. So the interesting little tidbit that I wanted to share today is it's historical, right? So we're not talking about this year. It's only going between January 1st of 2019 to December of 2021. So we're looking at last year and the year before that. Um, but it gives you an interesting statistical breakdown of what has been happening in terms of the approval rates for study permits, depending on country of origin. So take a look at this. It is interesting. You can kind of see trends for certain countries and the approval rates for study permits. So this is one thing I thought people might be curious about.
Yeah, and you can see some countries here. Monaco, 100% approval rate. Um, Guinea also, and after sorry, I was sorting. Thought I was sorted to highest, but now we're talking about the lowest approval ones, right?
Yes, yeah,
Oh, no, this is a
yeah.
fantastic resource, and oh, well, there we go. Pretty interesting. And yeah, you can also head over. You mentioned the delays. I think we've done this quite a bit on our live Q&A, but here's the check processing time, and go here, temporary residence, and then you would click on study permit from outside Canada. And again, this isn't triage by office, right? This isn't triage. So some offices are quicker than others. Some can be about 4 weeks. Some can be closer to 6 or 7 weeks. But do take a look here to see as to what you're expecting from outside Canada. I think is there a way to break it down by visa office? I thought there was a way to break it down by visa office.
I don't think for study permits it's giving you the option to do that.
Ah, oh, it's
I think
work
it's only giving you
permits.
that for work permits. Yeah,
I see. I see. Well, there we have it.
yeah.
All right. Well, here's the webpage. But yeah, fantastic resource. Alicia, thanks for sharing that. Let's go over to our next question. All right. So we have here another 10 to 15 minutes or so. Um, Interesting. So the settlement funds. So Chloe here has a question. Has a question about settlement funds, and this is actually in regards to a job offer in LMIA. So she says, "Hi Cedric and Alicia, good day. Food counter attendant job offer in LMIA. Do I still need settlement funds? How much is required to have in my bank account to apply for a work permit?" It's an interesting question.
So Chloe, I think maybe you're confusing the requirements for the work permit versus the requirements for the permanent residence application, and those are different things. So if you're looking at food counter attendants, a job offer under an LMIA, um, these are normally, so maybe we can pop over to the National Occupation Classification Code
Totally.
matrix, and we can, yeah, go take a look, and we can search for food counter attendant. So the first thing to do is try to figure out what is the knock if you're going to be looking at an application. So we've got 6711. All right. And then make sure that if you are interested in coming to Canada and you want to be doing a PR application, if you go over, and I don't know, Cedric, if you can pull up the matrix or
Yeah,
the
I think I'd have it. I think yeah, we could do it right here, right?
yeah,
I think if we click here, it's going to show the matrix. Yeah, there we go.
yeah.
Is this what you referred
And
to?
yeah, so the other way I like to look at it on the grid level. I'll just stick this into our chat,
Yeah,
and
please
you
do.
it might
But
be
I've
easier
seen
to
it
follow
already.
the
We had
link.
like the numbers and I just don't
Yeah,
know how to pull it up. Oh, view.
yeah,
Oh, anyways, let's see. Oh, the
there you go.
matrix. Let's take a look.
Yeah. So an easy way to take a look to figure out what skill level your job is to look at the grid view. And so a 6711, a food counter attendant, if you look on the right-hand column, is skill level D. So if you scroll all the way down and you figure out where the 6-7 occupations are coming, you'll see that it's in knock level D. And the problem with knock level C and D is that there are generally limited options for permanent residents. So if you are getting hired, it's considered a low skilled job offer under the LMIA. And it means that it's much harder to try to find some way to transition to permanent residency because for any of the express entry applications or the economic applications, generally you need to have a knock B or higher. So it's not going to work to have that 6711 knock category unless somehow you can manage to have your employer maybe get you a new LMIA or they get a new LMIA and they actually promote you over the years to some sort of food supervisor. And that may take a number of years for it to happen. But right now, I would say, okay, be careful with that 6711 because it is a low skilled knock D occupation. When somebody is hiring, so if an employer is hiring under a low wage occupation, something lower than the median for that province, then they have a number of added requirements. They have the requirement to pay for your transportation costs from wherever you are living overseas to Canada. They also have the requirement to make sure that you have affordable housing and that you have transportation from that affordable housing to your place of work. They have to make sure that they have healthcare coverage in place for you also. And there is no way that they are allowed to charge you for anything having to do with the labor market impact assessment, recruitment fees, anything having to do with that LMIA application fee, nothing. They can't charge you anything. So there should be absolutely zero requirement for you to have any sort of settlement funds or money that you have to pay out of pocket as part of this LMIA application. So be really careful about that. Basically, you have to be able to prove that you have actually the job experience required for that job in order to apply for the work permit, but you don't have to have any settlement funds.
Yeah, and I think this came up for me. It's a fantastic explanation, and this came up for me, Alicia. Yes, a few days ago, where I had a client who said, "Well, Cedric, take a look at this page, right? This page about who can apply for a work permit from outside Canada, right?" And so they sent me over here, and we take a look at the work permit who can apply, and then when we scroll down, we talk about the eligibility requirements for all applicants, right? One of them, which is obviously very important, that I stressed yesterday in my live Q&A, was to prove that you're going to leave Canada at the end of your stay, right? So we talk about ties in Canada, but we also talk about ties in your home country, like children, spouse, property, and whatnot. But the second thing that says here is show that you have enough money to take care of yourself and your family members during your stay in Canada and to return home. right?
Mhm.
So this question becomes like, how much money do you have to provide? And really, when we're dealing with work permits, you're coming to Canada with the expectation that this individual is going to be working to support themselves, right? So this being said, with this requirement in the IRCC guidance, does anything change on what you've just told us?
So no, it's not a settlement fund because you're not settling. So you're not coming here to live permanently. And this is, you're right, Cedric, for sure. You have to show that temporary intent.
Hmm.
And one of the things that officers practically look at in order to figure out whether somebody does have temporary intent is, do they have enough money in their bank account to pay for their return airfare? Could they actually get back to their country of nationality? Do they have a few $1,000s sitting in their bank account so that if they had to leave, they could actually book their plane fare for themselves and however many family members are accompanying them? So that's usually what they're getting at. And also, they want to make sure that this person has enough money so that they can make sure that they are able to buy food and pay for those startup expenses when you move to a new country. So, depending on the country that you're from and depending on where in Canada you're living, those expenses can be a little bit different. But these expenses all go to whether you can prove temporary intent. It doesn't have to deal with settlement funds.
There we have it. All right. We have maybe another 5 minutes here. Let's try to find a question that can apply to a lot of people. Um, Ozan says, hello, well, hello to you too. Annette, the first question that we talked about, the managerial, the jewelry company, says, yes, I'm managing 6 people on my team. I'm on a managerial position. Well, that's fantastic. Let's see what else we have here. Um, we have some very broad questions. Jack, what is a PNP or opportunity for HR professional? That's a really broad question. There's 10. Well, as I said yesterday, there's 10 provinces. Each have a handful of PNP programs. There's about 50 PNP programs, but in short, a PNP program is a province, right? So we have 10 provinces in Canada that can administer and invite foreign nationals to establish themselves inside their province, and each province has their own criteria, whether it's master's degrees, whether it's tech, whether it's healthcare, right, to place the labor needs of the province, right? But kind of a large question. I don't know if you want to say anything more about what is a PNP. Maybe a quick Google search can help, but I'll let you chime in.
Yeah, so the PNP stands for Provincial Nomination Program. And so you're absolutely right, Cedric. Each province tends to have its own program. There are some that cover a region, for example, the Atlantic immigration programs. So that covers the 4 Atlantic programs, but there's also ones specifically for some of the maritime provinces themselves as well as standalone programs. And most of the time, it is very important that you have some sort of connection to that province, meaning that you have gone to an accredited school in that province and you're graduating from that province, or that you have a family member that lives in that province and is a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, or you have a job offer from an employer that is located in that province. Those are the key areas. Because the provinces only have a certain number, they have a quota basically every year of nominations that they can give out to try to attract and retain foreign nationals to live in their province. And they don't want to waste those nominations. They want to make sure that whoever they're nominating has a high likelihood of remaining in their province and becoming a contributor. So that's why it's very specific to really being tied to that province rather than just kind of a way for anybody to come to Canada that wouldn't qualify under the normal express entry program.
Yeah, I think the more popular ones, if you don't have Link inside Canada, would be Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And I think
Mhm.
as well, the Atlantic Immigration Program also allows foreign nationals with at least 1 year of skilled work experience in your occupation to apply as well, right? So these don't require to have, as I mentioned, to have links, to have ties to the province, and they tend to be a little bit easier, if you will, to get in, and they're an alternative to Express Entry, right? To the three main programs in Express Entry.
Yeah, keep in mind though that there is a separate application process. So it's not It's not part of the main Express Entry, though a lot of them do have Express Entry linked applications. So sometimes you have to have that Express Entry application in order to qualify for some of those provincial nominee programs as well. But most of them have a separate platform, and sometimes there are separate fees that you have to pay. And you've got to really carefully make sure that you're meeting the program requirements for whatever provincial nominee program you're applying for.
There we have it. Ghislaine Hydro says, J'ai reçu mon passport request. Ma destination, c'est l'Alberta. Well, that's fantastic. Alicia's in Alberta, actually, so maybe you'll run into Alicia in Calgary.
That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Let's keep taking a look here. All right, so we're just going to wrap things up here in a few more minutes. We're going to take, again, we are immigration lawyers at Healthy Immigration Law. So if you do have any questions, and if you want us to help you with your express entry application, with your work permit, your study permit, head on over to our website, again, Health Immigration Law, healthlaw.com. Go ahead here and book an immigration consultation. So it all starts with a consultation where we talk about the chance of success, their previous applications, talked about what you need to include to have a successful or to properly prepare your application. So we do have experience, Alicia in particular, 18 years, 18, 19 years, a lot of
Yeah.
experience. I was writing some content today, and I wrote hundreds, helped hundreds of applicants, and I think I had to go back and say thousands of applicants because you've done quite a bit of work. Myself, 5 years of experience. Newer to the practice. I worked previously with the government, the UN, in any event. Here's our services. Here's how you book a consult with us. We'd love to speak with you to help you with your application. So there we have it. All right, let's head on over and find our final question. Um, so sorry, I'm just trying to find one that we haven't touched upon yet. Chloe says, "Thank you, Alicia and Cedric." Well, thank you, Alicia. You've been taking all of these questions on. Um, an eligibility question about the Canadian Experience class, which I think is a great way to end today's Q&A. So LJH says, does foreign work experience have to be continuous if I want to claim points for CEC application? Sorry, it doesn't have to do with eligibility, but it has to do with CRS points.
Okay. So there are two aspects to making sure that you qualify for Express Entry. One is making sure that you meet the minimum eligibility criteria. And so if you go to Express Entry and minimum eligibility criteria,
Let me just pull it up here.
and yeah, minimum eligibility, you will see that there are two ways. So it's you've got federal skilled worker and we've got the experience under CEC. So it's under the heading eligibility to apply as a federal skilled worker. And so one of the things that you'll see if you look there is that,
Sorry to interrupt you, Alicia. Sorry, I know you can't see the questions. Sorry. So does foreign work experience have to be continuous if I want to claim points for the CEC?
right. And so when you create your profile, it's going to show you whether you've met the program eligibility requirements for federal skilled worker, federal skilled trades, or Canadian experience class. And sometimes you can meet the requirements for both CEC and FSW. Foreign work experience, if you're going to be claiming the points for foreign work, as a minimum eligibility requirement, it has to have been continuous. But if you're looking at CEC, then you have the ability to combine different NOCs. So for CEC, if you're meeting minimum eligibility for CEC, you can have 1 year of Canadian work experience, and be careful that Canadian work experience is a defined term under the ministerial instructions. So it has to have been for over 30 hours. You cannot combine jobs to count more than 30 hours in any given week. And you have to be able to add up various high skilled knock, so knock A, B, or O, to meet that Canadian qualifying experience. But if you also want points for your foreign work experience, then you have to make sure that your foreign work experience is also going to count for points. But there's two things. There's the selection factor grid, and then there's also your CRS score. So take a look at whether you meet the selection factor grid as your starting point, because that's your minimum eligibility. You either have to meet the minimum selection factors for federal skilled worker or for CEC. Once you've done that, then you're looking at your CRS scores to figure out whether you can also claim those points for your foreign work experience.
Yeah, sorry, Alicia. I think you're. I apologize for interrupting you. I think you're on the right track there with the federal skilled worker when you're talking about eligibility. Sorry, I know you can see the questions, hence why I was trying to guide you a little bit, but you're 100% right. And I apologize for interrupting you, but
No, no.
correct. If there's the different continuous, right, under federal skilled worker, eligibility is
Yeah,
different than the definition of the ministerial instructions for points, right?
yeah.
Um, so there we have it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Alicia. I really enjoy doing live Q&As with you. It's really different than doing it on your own, and I think you have a great pace, tons of knowledge, and obviously tons of experience. And yeah, just super happy to be able to do this together. And any closing thoughts, comments?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for you, Cedric, for
Oh,
hosting
that's
this. It is fantastic. I have not been able to figure out the technology on this, so I am happy to come and speak. And it is fantastic that you have taken the time and the effort to go through all the little nitty gritty details to try to make it all come together and work. And it's fantastic. Yeah, definitely. I have had some consults with people who say they are watching and they appreciate the fact that we are here giving information to people, and it really makes it worthwhile. So thank you to you, Cedric, and thank you to everybody for listening and tuning in today.
great. Well, bye for now, guys.